frame right now, the only aggrieved partner is the woman, because he promised not to do that. But God, only indirectly. There's no real prohibition for him to have sex with another woman. If a woman fools around, it is. God's involved in that, right? That's just biblically, right? This scenario of shutafut, it's unclear how is God involved if I break the shutafut. What neder does nicely is that it makes God a partner. If I violate my commitment, then I have to answer not only to the partner but to God. So neder would be a way, and I think an interesting way, of involving God in the picture as you're accountable not only to the partner. It's not only, I cheated on you. No, I cheated on God by violating my word, which is a biblical prohibition to make a neder. Okay? The myth. For me, this is actually even more important in a certain way. Because if we don't have a grounding myth to make sense of what God is up to in our relationship, then we're not going to be able, I think, to fully celebrate what we're doing and get how we're a resource. So here's what I want to suggest. I'm going to read a little bit from my book, but very little. And then I want to dive into the materials that I think ground them. I want to actually go back to creation. You'll see why I'm going back to creation later. I am not going back to the creation story in order to somehow throw in an Adam and Steve in place of Adam and Eve. But I actually want to review the myth because what's really interesting about the creation story is that it is not all beautiful. There's something, there are wrong things, or there are problems with it. There are cracks in the process. And what is interesting about the possibility of a gay myth is that it actually is attentive to those cracks. The starting point of Genesis is the story of God. Before creation, God fills existence. There's nothing else. There's no else. There is nothing else. No place for an other. God's oneness is without division, separation. One is all-powerful without needing any power over to be so. God is powerful without having any power. Because power insists upon power over, and there's no other. One is stable, unchanging, sure, whole. One is before creation. The seed of creation is more than one. At the moment of creation, the magisterial oneness of God, according to the Jewish mystics, concentrated itself to leave room for an other. Creation is the possibility of two, but twos are problems. Two is a rickety thing, a temptation, a suspicious thing, an ecstatic thing, a thrilling thing, a dangerous thing. Two always have a history. Pain and pleasure of difference, the tragedy and glory of the lines that separate things are the subtext of the first chapters of Genesis. Separation between things inaugurates creation. Light and dark, day and night, waters above and below, dry land, seas are all separated. It is by these separations that creation unfolds. Much like the infant separates first physically and then psychically from its mother, little by little, the world comes into being by the separations amid chaos. This birthing of the world was not without resistance. As the waters above and below separated, they suffered to be split, say the rabbis. Robertia said the upper and lower waters separated from each other in nothing. That's the heavens and the seas. The waters long to be undifferentiated in union in the Godhead. Creation sunders them apart. It appears that matter is not indifferent to its condition. All things want union, and so creation struggles against a resistance. Like a newborn, the waters above and below come into the world, kicking and screaming, salting the seas with their tears. Twos pose another problem. Separation is a birth pang that passes, but once there are twos, how do they relate? On the third day of creation, there are two great lights, and the fourth day of creation, there are two great sea monsters. Both are called Gedolim, the Me'orot and the Tanimim. But what's interesting is Me'orot is missing a Vav, therefore it's misspelled, and so is Tanimim, missing a letter. And so there's something wrong with the greatness of both the lights and the big sea monsters, and we discover that there is a problem in twos. And that is where we're going to take our study next. Please turn. We're going to skip the mirror for 1 minute. And go to sharing of the crown. Page number? 4. Thank you. God makes the two great lights. The greater lights to rule the day and the lesser lights to rule the night. Someone please read, if you will, the Midrash in school.
Said the moon before God, Holy One, Master of the universe, is it possible for two kings to rule with one crown? He said to her, go and make yourself small then. She said before him, because I asked a good question, I should diminish myself? God then said, I will teach her, go rule in night and even in day. She responded, what good is that? What advantage is there for a candle in the daylight? He said to her, go and let Israel count her days and years by you. She said, a year calendar cannot function without the solar season. God saw that she was not appeased, and so the Holy One said to her, bring me a sin offering for me that I diminish the moon. That is what Resh Lakish meant when he said, what is the difference between the goat and the new moon that is called God's sin offering? God says, this will be for me an offering that I diminish the moon.
The moon and the sun were initially equal. And the moon asked a question. What's the question? How did two great kings rule with one crown? God says, didn't think about that. Okay, great. Diminishes the moon, she complains. Finally, God realizes that the hierarchy created is unfair. And God brings a sin offering monthly to apologize to the moon. What's interesting is, this is a very poor form of apology, because if you want to do tshuva, what do you got to do? You got to prepare. So the text actually is really strange, because God's bringing a sacrifice, but obviously is not fixing the moon. Now this story is really profound. By the way, the two sea monsters are also problematic, because the rabbis say they're so great, if they reproduce, they'll destroy the world. So one of them is killed. Twos are problems. Twos are problems. And in here, twos are problems because of power arrangements. Twos need to figure out who's in charge, and when they can't, if they don't, they're going to kill each other, so better construct a hierarchical safety. Hierarchy is how you get things done without bloodshed. Every office, every workforce, right, has created some level of hierarchy in order to get things done with the minimum amount of conflict. Hierarchy is a resource for limiting conflict in human social relations. But of course, at whose expense? The moon. Who is the moon in almost every culture? Women. The moon is a feminized symbol, both in terms of its lunar cycle and in terms of the way in which it gets pregnant, and then it disappears, and it grows and shapes. So women's shape shifts, right? The sun has masculine overtones. It might be that this is a conversation about the diminishment of the feminine in the world as a resource for getting things done, and a sin against humanity, or at least here, against the world. The same story appears in the creation story. And I want to do very quickly this. Some of you are familiar with it, but then I want to go immediately into my solution. You know this text, because anyone who's gay knows it instinctually, even if you've never learned it.
Give us a page.
Page 2. Thank you. And God made the Adam in his image. In the image of God made he him, male and female made he them. So this poem, if you look carefully at it, is really interesting because the first two lines repeat and the third one is interpretive. God made Adam in his image. In the image of God made he Adam. So that's the same line, just backwards. Then it's male and female made he them. So what is male and female taking the place of in the poem? Image of God. Correct. In other words, God and the image, male and female, in the image of God, are what is being kind of elided. In other words, if you look at the poem, man, image of God, man, image of God, right? And male and female, man. So do you understand that